Hey guys, welcome back to Total Tactics Football. It's Fran here, and we'll be kind of looking at a different little video today, given the fact that Game Week 2 is not officially over yet. But we'll be looking ahead in terms of how people are planning to transfer, especially in anticipation of future game weeks around the international break. One of the key issues we have now is that under the current kind of existing rules with kind of travel restrictions in terms of the UK and the governmental guidelines that are in case, is that a lot of the players who will be playing abroad in countries that are red listed will have to be dealing with mandatory isolation in a hotel. And this is based on the full red list of countries that you can see right now on my screen. As we go down the list, I think some of the key countries that we're talking about would be Argentina, would be Brazil, would be Colombia, and several other countries such as Egypt, where of course we have Salah playing as well. And all these countries and their players who would be playing in these countries, Mexico even with Raul Jimenez as an example, these players would be affected because they would have to spend 10 days in isolation. And the issue with the international fixtures is, if I show you, for example, Brazil's international fixtures, you can clearly see that they're playing, on the 3rd of September all the way to the 10th of September in around South America. And this means, of course, they would likely miss game week 4. Because game week 4 is going to take place in the 11th to 13th of September, which means that obviously these players will be missing game week 4. And then if we look at game week 5, we're talking about the 17th and 19th of September. Now, if you're looking at kind of any players who've been called up by Brazil as an example, clearly they won't be back in the UK and ready to kind of play Premier League football by game week 5, which means that they will probably come back to their sides in game week 6. This is a huge kind of thing that might affect a lot of players, and this was initially reported, I think, by Sky Sports in February, and the situation really hasn't changed. If you look at the rules in terms of the UK, there are some sort of exemptions in place, especially for elite sports persons. But right now, the Premier League doesn't really fit within the category of competitions or kind of tournaments that would be given this kind of exemption as per now. And so one of the issues that we'll be dealing with is looking at kind of a list of players that are set to be missing out in these friendlies. And we've created that here for you guys, in a spreadsheet here. These are the key FPL players, in our opinion at least, who would probably be in your kind of FPL selections. Of course, there are much more players who exist within the Premier League who might be also having to deal with quarantines. But I think here is a more definitive list of players who would be probably missing out at least game week 4 or even game week 5. Now, the nice thing for a player like Salah, as an example, is if we look at Egypt fixtures, clearly he only misses out probably game week 4 because he returns and has time to quarantine, hopefully, with day 0 being, let's say, the 6th of September. He probably has the ability to actually play in game week 5. Now, of course, one of the tricky things that we'll be dealing with is whether or not some managers will decide to kind of give players additional rest because, Jurgen Klopp, for example, is more of a, I would say, safety first manager. He probably doesn't want someone like Salah to get injured, especially if he's played recently, and if he's not trained with the team, sometimes it might be the case where he decides not to play Salah. Now, I think that's probably not going to be the case, but that could affect some of the players here where some coaches might exert a little bit more of caution over them, and that's why we'd have to be looking at that. So when we look at someone like Antonio as well as an example, I mean, he's been included because first of all, he is going to be probably playing for his first kind of set of games for Jamaica. Previously, he was kind of known as an English international, but The Athletic recently did report that he would probably be switching his passport to Jamaica, which means that, or he already has done so, which means that he's probably fit to play in September for Jamaica. So this is, of course, going to affect a lot of players with high selection percentage, and in a way, we'll have to kind of build around this. And if you look at my team, for example, if I'm to make some transfers in the future, clearly I'm someone who's somewhat affected with Antonio potentially being out. We know Tsimikas, for example, is going to have to deal with Robertson coming back into the side, and then someone like Salah might be missing game week 4. So right now we have to kind of think about ways to kind of build around your teams and draft around the issue. One thing could be, even going away from players like Salah and Antonio in game week 3, or even earlier now, because given the fact that Salah is playing Chelsea next week, which I imagine would be quite a tough game, but they're still playing at Anfield. So these are the kind of things you have to think about, not only just thinking about how to improve your team, but also trying to make sure that you are as secure as possible. Because last year we, of course, knew that a lot of players who had to deal with kind of on the fly COVID issues or quarantine, led us to a lot of missed points, and we don't really want to hit that situation this year. But as the rules are in place right now, this would be how things stand for a lot of these players. So I would refer back to this kind of spreadsheet as a baseline. But there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel here, right? There is potential for, as the Standard reported, for a kind of red list review or a governmental review to take place over the kind of traffic light system. And the latest update we got was on August the 5th. And it seems like we might be expecting one on August the 25th or the 26th, which would mean that we still have time to potentially wait for this governmental review to come into place before we make transfers for the next week. Now, of course, a lot of players are going to hit some price rises in game week 2, and that's a huge thing to worry about, right? Players like Greenwood and Jota might be in a very, very beneficial situation, because if you look at someone like Cavani, for example, who might have to play for Uruguay, Greenwood is probably going to be set for that kind of centre forward position for the foreseeable future. For Jota, who's been starting the first 2 match days, he could benefit as well, with Firmino probably missing out game weeks 4 and 5 once again. And this is a time where I think we have to kind of strategize a little bit and think about getting players who are not going to be affected by this situation, or at least making sure that at the very most we only have 1 or 2 players who be affected, and we have at least a bench in place to kind of deal with it. I'm personally thinking even about downgrading Salah for now, or trying to jiggle my squad around so that I can get towards Lukaku, who's probably going to be invulnerable from this kind of situation. This all has to do with the fact that a lot of these countries are playing World Cup qualifiers, and there's no kind of, alignment in terms of with the Premier League in terms of the governmental restrictions to the UK. So these are as things stand right now. By the way, also, if you guys enjoyed the video, I really appreciate if you guys subscribe. So we can kind of see here that 75% of you are unsubscribed watching our videos. So if you enjoy our content and you want to kind of receive more kind of information, please also click the notification bell as well. That'd be really appreciated. In terms of game week 2, we still kind of have to wait for the West Ham game to come about and see what happens with Leicester there before I kind of do my official review and do my update on the game week 3 team selection. But that's it for now, guys. Thank you very much for watching the video, and we'll see you soon. And also, feel free to also drop us down a comment on what you think the best solutions are in terms of, let's say, dealing with players like Salah or players like Antonio, because I know most of us are going to have players like Antonio and Salah. Do you guys think it's suitable to maybe change the formation? Do you guys think it's best to maybe drop into maybe like 5 midfielders potentially, or do you think it's better to go for some straight swaps right now?